Hi, I'm Nick from Craftapalooza Designs, and I'm here to share with you all about my Apple Pincushion pattern sew along. We're going to sew, if you want, a mini half-inch hexagon apple. I don't know if I've got one that's not hexagon. Yes, here you go. Or you can sew the one that's straight from the pattern. Now this sew along doesn't start until mid-May, but we're doing some pre-work now for those of us that want to sew a half hexagon version like this. What we're going to do is we're going to stamp with a half-inch hexagon patchwork stamp onto fabric, our hexagons, and then hand sew them together, hand piece them together. However, if you prefer English paper piecing, you can EPP the panels together. What I'm going to give you is I'm going to email, if you sign up to the sew along, I will email you the EPP sheet that I use. It's under fabric right now, so I can't show you, but you'll see it in the video, of how to lay out the hexagons so that they suit the apple template. We're going to sew 4 of these panels, or 3 if you want to do like a 3 apple with one plain, or if you can do all 4. I'm going to sew another one that's all 4. We're going to, basically over the next month or so, we're going to sew the panels and get them ready. So I'm allowing enough time because some of us still work jobs, and just to allow enough space and time to EPP the panels or hand piece the panels. But if you're new to hand piecing, it might just take a little time. If you are hand piecing for the first time with this project, I would recommend first stamping or cutting out some 1-inch hexagons and sewing them how I'd show you to sew them, just so like just a test set, because the half-inch are great, they're small. So if your stitches are still new and not short, you just probably won't get as great a seam. But we do interface these, so that does help protect the seams. The seams don't really stretch because they're behind interfacing, so they're protected. But yeah, I would recommend probably if you're new to hand piecing to just do some practicing. That's all, it will improve your stitching. Anyhow, we're here for the sew along. So you will need to pay for the pattern. The sew along is free, 100%. And I'll give you my tips and tricks on how to make an apple the best way I can make an apple, and this extra free part of EPPing the apple. But the pattern itself is paid, the sew along is free. I'll put links below so you can look at it all. We'll go from there. Thanks for your time. Enjoy sewing. I'll see you mid-May for the sew along. Don't forget the links below. Thanks again. Okay, I'm going to quickly show you stamping hexagons. You do not have to stamp. You can also use one of these, which I include with my stamp kits. And you could use this with the stamp kit if you want to actually fussy cut, like if you had some really tight fussy cutting you wanted to do, or you can EPP, and I'll show you quickly how to glue baste with a glue stick. Okay, so stamping first. This is, most questions I get, I use an archival acid-free pad. So this ink doesn't wash out, but it fades. I've never had a problem with it. Lots of other people use it in the industry. It will fade with time. The only time I've seen real show through is with stamping Liberty Tanner Lawn, but by the time it's stitched together, I'm not going to notice it. So on these fabrics, I'm using like a gold or a sand colour. So ink up your pad. And if you're ever not sure, test it on paper first, or use it on a bit of scrap fabric. Always test to make sure you're happy. And I inevitably upset someone because I do not stamp. My little ADHD brain, I'm using scrap. I'm not trying to stamp in even little rows, but you could easily cut strips of fabric so you get perfect little stamps out. But I'm going to be fussy cutting a lot of stuff, you know, or using scraps. I don't mind how my stamps go. They dry pretty quick, so I usually stamp a bunch. This is for my another apple. So stamp a bunch and then let it dry. It doesn't take long to dry, and if you want to speed up the drying, you could just use a warm iron and give it a press. And so that's white. I wanted to show you. You can't see that. I should have washed that, so don't do what I'm doing. You clean stamp between pads. I don't. That's slightly darker. So I'm not going to push as hard on the ink, so I get a lighter impression. Okay. So you can test that before you start stamping. And I'll show you the other side. It's pretty good, and by the time it's sewn in, you're not going to know, and it will fade with time. It does not run, doesn't run, but you want acid free because that's the best for your fabric. If I want to fussy cut, so those motifs, you can do it with a stamp, and I'm not using the handle here. My stamp sets come with a handle. I'm trying to get those little white cameos, so I literally will just cut out some hexagons to show you. Now, I don't mind I'm a hand sewer, so I have no problem with hand cutting. If you want to try and rotary cut, go for it. I don't do it because I just don't trust myself. I have a neurodivergent brain that can sometimes get ahead of itself, so I really do not want a blade injury. So I'm really happy cutting with scissors. And again, I'm slow because I'm standing here if I was sitting in my little chair, I'd be faster. And you want to try and cut this out within reason as accurately as possible, so that when you're matching up hexagons later to sew seams, you're not fighting against uneven shapes to pin them together. It can make you take more time. So that's one. And what I usually use is I have baby wipes at home, so I would just wipe that down with a baby wipe. In between, I don't leave it out, it will dry out. I like to keep it in a container. I put it back in the sleeve it came in and keep it secure. Same with your, keep these nice and secure and sealed up. They will dry out. You can re-ink some of them, so that's an option. Next up is we're going to, I'll show you how to glue baste. With these really small shapes, you might find you destroy them getting out. I have no problem with small shapes, but if you're using big shapes and a lot for a bigger quilt, you don't really want to destroy your shapes. But for small projects, I'm not too fussed. And I'm not doing fussy cutting, so I do a little dab of glue on there to keep it in place. And then snip it out. It's 1/4 inch. I just eyeball this. And I actually usually hold it in my hand, so I usually just do a swipe of glue. And by doing a dab of glue here, it keeps it from sliding around. And also, like if you prefer to do it flat, you can do it flat. So you want to take glue across the whole line. Glue. And make sure I've got that nice and snug. Across the whole line. And glue across the whole line. I haven't glued, see how it's popped up, so just put a little dab of glue there. Pop that down. Give it a squish. I iron these later. And that's one glue basted. So I've sewn, this is for EPP. I've sewn these together. I'm going to add, because it's a hexagon ring, I'm doing little hexagon rings. I want to add this next hexagon to, it's a little cat, to here. So I'm going to flip that over like that. Some people use clips. For these small ones, I don't use anything. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't cut my thread from here. I slide it underneath, pop it out in the corner. If you want to do a whole quilt, I probably wouldn't do it this way, but for small projects, I just try and cut corners sometimes, and the thread will just go. Just make sure it hasn't done what I think it's done, which is go, yep, okay. There you go, okay. All right, so what I do is, most important is you want to start and finish with nice firm joins, so get the points. Just make sure that camera's clear. And I usually do 2 stitches here. It's probably just me being over the top. But, you can do a flat stitch, but I like to do almost like a ladder, and because it's so small. So just take tiny little stitches, caught my scissors. I'll show you that again. It really is a personal preference. So I'm not telling you that this is the only way to EPP. This is one way, and this is the way I do it. If you do it another way, do it however you prefer to do it. This is just my preference. To the end of the line. Okay, so if you get to the end of the line, now this one joins up not too bad. I just want to see it. Okay, I want to do, again, it's all about keeping intersections and joins firm. So I'm going to do a little tacking stitch on those two, between those 2 corners. I'll give it a little pull, and you can't see my thread. Now, because this is a small project and we're actually going to be interfacing, if you do have some slight gaps, like I think I've got a little gap here, you're not, like I have to pull it to see it, right? But we're going to be putting interfacing on the back of this, right? So these won't, the interfacing will be securing it, so don't be too worried about that. So you will need to do EPP, or you can hand piece these panels. I will be hand piecing, and I've stamped my fabric with a patchwork stamp. You can also trace it. And if you don't have a half-inch hexagon, I'll include one in the printout. So you could print it onto cardstock and use that. So you would trace the outer and the inner. And sometimes I do this anyhow, even if I am stamping, just to get like a motif if it's hard to get really accurate. So that's how I do that. So this can be really useful. That's why when I send out my patchwork stamp kits, I send out one of these. You can see on here that there's this whole panel. So this is the hexagons with their seam allowance. So there's a little diagram that's not to scale here. You will need the pattern, but it's slightly distorted. But that's kind of where the template will sit. So these hexagons, you'll be able to see almost the whole hexagon. So you can kind of see it. This one's a better placement, so you can see all those 6 there, and you can see sort of like half and half of those ones. So you kind of want your feature hexagons here, and then these ones here you will pretty much lose. Use scrap fabric. Don't be too stressed about it. I'd rather have more than I need than not enough. So for this, I'm doing one of my apples. I'm doing a Heather Ross one, and I went through my Heather Ross monkey fabric. So I want to use some really cute like fussy cut images, because Heather illustrates beautiful things. So yeah. And what I want to do in the centre for my choice is I want everything facing into the centre for this panel. I might not do it in every panel, but I'm going to do it on this panel. So I've got all these hexagons cut out. Let me show you. Way more than I need, but like, who cares, right? It was fun preparing them. So I'll just keep the extras. I can always use them for smaller projects later. So I'm just going to... I love this yellow that Heather does. Aliens are awesome. A doggy, so I might put the orange so it's opposite. And then I'm going to do a little pink bee down the bottom. Okay, so then the next prints, I'm going to lose at least sort of half of them on the diagonal, and these will disappear sort of top and bottom, but you'll be able to see it, so it's there and kind of there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep. So that's the bottom. So you need to kind of think about that if you really want to feature a fabric and it's going to disappear into a seam, or actually I want this little teacup dog. Look at this adorable little doggy. Heather's just, yeah, she's an amazing illustrator. I love this green that Heather does. I'm going to use that green. I love these apples. Look, I just love it all, so I just keep saying I love it till you hear sick of hearing me say it. Use that one, plain one. Actually, no, I'm going to use the plain ones down here. No, I want to see that hex. I want to see that. So I'm going to throw an occasional random, actually you're not going to see that, so I don't want that strawberry there, because it's going to disappear. So I'll put my strawberries at the bottom. So this one, that's a half, yeah. And I might put my rose that way, when it's slightly upside down. I might put it on this side. So you kind of like just think about it. Really just focus on the centre there. And then you'll see some of that flower. And then the rest, I'm just going to use fill-in. I'm just going to use hexagons I've already cut from Heather's fabric, from outer bits that I don't mind using. So now what we do from here is we sew these together. So if we're hand piecing, like we're not EPPing, if we're hand piecing, you will sew these in rows. So all of these in rows. Sometimes I take a photo before I start sewing, just in case I forget orientation, if I want fabrics a certain way up. So I take a photo of my phone and I can just quickly refer to it. We'll do some sewing and show you. So you want to sew all of these in rows, and then I'll show you how we zigzag up using hand piecing. You can also obviously EPP these. So to sew this panel, we're going to sew the hexagons in rows. And I said before, but I'll say it again, take a photo of this panel. So if you have got specific placement and like directional prints, you know where everything goes again, and you can check your phone as you're sewing and moving things around, because I always make mistakes. This is just, maybe it's just a me thing. So you put your two, so what you want to do is you want to sew in rows. So you want to flip it up, and then remember where that seam is. So that's the seam I want, that one there. And it doesn't matter on this edge because it's an edge, but if you were using directional prints, it would matter to you potentially. And I need one pin to do this. And also because this is such a short seam, you won't be doing a lot of stitches. And you will see me fumbling a bit on screen. This isn't my natural sewing position, so my dexterity is not quite the same. So just line it up. And I've stamped these hexagons, as you can see. Okay, good enough. Right, one pin. With hand piecing, we basically don't sew into the seam allowance. We sew point to point. So because I've got a knot here, I don't usually like a knot, but I'm going to keep that knot there. I'll pull it down in a minute. All right. So I do a back stitch at the start and end of all my stitching, and today my thread is not going to behave because I'm filming. All right, and so it's basically a running stitch. So every time you reload your needle, you want to do a back stitch. Because this is such a short seam, I'm going to do 2 stitches. I would normally do more, but it's a short seam, and I want you to see back stitches. This thread's not behaving today. Okay. Get to the end. And back stitch. I will show you how I knot off. So I've done I've got to the end, and now I'm going to take a back stitch. Before I pull the back stitch through, I'm going to have the thread that's in the working thread that's sitting in here if you're left-handed, right-handed, you'd do it the other way around. And then I'm going to bring the thread around and knot around the needle 2 or 3 times, and then it's going to knot. Okay, so we're going to open that out. And this is where taking a photo helps, because you wouldn't remember which way is up, so you can refer to your photo as to which way is up or down. And what we want to do is we want to push our seams, when we're sewing them in rows, we want it for hand piece, we want to push these seams all in the same direction. So I'm going to push them all up. I'm just going to finger press it. Okay, so see how it shrinks down, and now I'm going to add the next one on top. And I'm going to show you this second, the other way I knot, which is, I'm going to show you this knot. So take your needle through. If you're right-handed, obviously you'll be sewing right to left. I'm left-handed, I'm sewing left to right. So you're going to do 1 stitch, keep a tail, and then bring your needle back to the start point like a back stitch. Take the thread so it's on the other side of the needle, and then take this live thread, wrap it around the needle a couple times. I do 2 or 3. Have it down the base of the needle. Carefully pull the needle up, and you would have your starting thread. Now my thread, I don't know if it's this colour, but it is knotting weirdly today, and normally it's a very low profile. So that looks really messy, but it's not normally. All right, and that's how I always start and finish my patchwork. So we're going to go. Again, like I said before, these smaller seams are a bit more challenging for newbies, and I'm standing. It's not my natural sewing position, so I'm a bit more awkward. I'm going to finish it off. Now, I actually do normally, I'm not going to do it today, I do cut your thread. Again, seams all the same direction. You can finger press for now. First row's done. It didn't take that long. Now we continue. We just sew, again, keep your photo and sew all the rest of the seams. And then once we've done that, so go away, do that, and then I'm going to come back in a minute, or I'm going to come back straight away, and I'm going to show you how we do the zigzag part. Okay, so I've sewn all of the rows and all my seams are going in the same direction. It doesn't matter if they're not, we can fix this afterwards. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zigzag up the row. Right, 6. So you can see the seams line up. So 6 hexagons there. And then we're going to put these guys in here. Hand piecing, this is like a Y seam or pivoting in quilting, hand sewing. So you're going to flip this down, okay, like that. Hold that with your hand, get your pin. You want to pin that. And you want to get it into that corner here. Okay. So this is probably like the trickiest part, getting your head around it. And look, if you sew things together incorrectly, just unpick it, check it, and start again. So now, this is how we start it. I have done a knot this time rather than... Okay, back stitch. And then we want a running stitch across the seam to the end of the seam. And then we want to do a back stitch. Always do a back stitch at the start and the beginning and keep it secure. It helps keeps the beginning and end of your seams firm. So then if you open that up, it's going to sit like that. It's going to look awkward, but it's going to sit like that. And then what you do is you pivot it down. Hopefully I've done this right. I always question myself. Yep. So then take the next seam you want to stitch. You find the next seam along here. Put it to there. Pull your seam tight. So because this is small, it's probably just a little bit fiddly. So you just want to keep your points lined up. So if you're new to this, have patience and just take a moment to breathe if you find things are getting tangled and sorry if I'm going off screen here. Tangled and wrinkled. Pin on the end. Make sure you pull that out. So it kind of looks like that now. I know, it looks like nothing. Get your seams lined up. And get it through the back there. And again, we will do a back stitch at the beginning of the next seam. And I'll show you what this looks like in a minute. Because it's small, like I said, it can get a little bit fiddly, so just take your time. Like I've just got my thread around the hexagons. And that's why practicing on 1-inch hexagons is not a bad idea. If you're new to this, just take your time, breathe, have a moment if you get tangled and start again. Walk away from it if it's frustrating you. Learning things just takes time sometimes, and just have some patience with yourself. So I got to the end of that. I can't remember if I did a back stitch. I'm just going to do another back stitch. It's not going to hurt anyone. Okay. Right, I'm going to open that up. And we've got that hexagon attached. So we just keep going up the side. So as long as you've got that first one that we did, that first seam in the right position, zigzagging up the seam should be relatively straightforward, if a little confusing. It is easier to visualize with bigger hexagons. I'll just keep repeating myself. So, and I'll show you, and I'll finish this seam. I'll show you the whole one, and then I'll start adding the next one. And so when you've got this here, where you've got like your threads here, and you want to start here, we don't stitch seams down in hand piecing. So you want to take your needle just through that point to the other side. Just take it straight through, and then do your back stitch. Yes, I've got different coloured threads because I was demonstrating. It will be okay. Now, if you don't want to hand sew, you can, of course, EPP. Okay. Again, doesn't matter. I keep explaining that my fingers turn to thumbs on video, but back stitch. Open it out. Next seam, we pivot. That join is nice and snug. You want to get all your points in. That's how you get nice nice joins with hand piecing. Happy with that. Do a back stitch. Okay, so we've got one more seam to show to get these hexes attached. Knot it off. Done my knot. Snip it off. Okay, it's attached. So now what I'm going to do, so all our seams were going the same way, so that makes it easier when it comes to this part, which is, and if you want to press it you can, but I just finger press at this point. So that's those two. So we've only got like 3 more rows to attach. So what you could do is you could attach that one to that one and then attach these either side to that one. So I'm just going to start to attach this to here so you can see this even further. So if you look at the diagram, how it attaches, so you want to fit it like that. So again, pivot down. So when you look at it, it's on a diagonal like that. Pick it up. Looks like spaghetti. Flip it so you get the next seam. So just focus on where's the next seam on the bit I'm sewing attaching to. So flip it around. Okay. Flip it around. Get that out of the way. Get your pin. Open it up. And we keep going. do the pivot, keep that out the way. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going. I'll be back with a finished panel. Okay, so all the panels are sewn together, the 5 panels, the strips sewn zigzag together. And then I pressed it with the iron, and because all my seams this way were going in all the same direction, they help when you're pivoting seams. See if I can get this focused. So you can see they're all going that way, and then the seams are pivoted. And because we don't sew into the seam allowance, they pivot nicely. So if you were paper piecing, English paper piecing, you'd sew them all together, and then you'd take the papers out when you're ready, and you could also manage your seams the same way if you wanted to. So then what we do is I'm going to sew 3 more of these for the rest of my apple, and I will then iron them onto, you can use a woven or an unwoven lightweight interfacing. So you've got the next few weeks to basically sort out these panels and sew either 3 or 4 panels, or you could sew 2 hexagon panels and do a 2 panel apple. I'm also doing, I don't have the panels here with me, I'm doing a Liberty Betsy version as well. Okay, if you have any questions about any of this, reply to the email that you're going to get to me about the sew along. Yeah, you can share. Oops, sorry. You can join the Facebook group and share in there, or you can tag me on Instagram and use hashtags. But also, you can tag my account at Craftapalooza. I don't mind being tagged because it's so hard to find posts these days. So if you tag me, that's fine, because I'd love to see your posts while you're making your hexagons. And the sew along will start in May. But yeah, any questions, let me know. Have patience with yourself if you're new to hand sewing patchwork, especially these small hexagons. That will take a little bit of patience, and have fun with it. Okay, speak to you soon.